So if you're in the correct meeting, you have found us at the Community of Practice Transition to Employment series. This is our 9th session. So for some of you, I see a lot of familiar faces and names. Thanks for sticking with us. If you're new to the group, thanks for joining, or if you've come back after a few months, appreciate you following along with us. We do have a YouTube playlist with all of the sessions and some of those materials on the CED website. We are the Center for Excellence in Disabilities. Myself, Mandy Filippelli, I'm the Grants and Partnership Development Officer, and Courtney Lanham is on the call as well. Courtney is the training specialist at the CED. The CED is part of West Virginia University and WVU Health Sciences Center, which puts us in a unique position to be able to tap into the various disciplines across the university, School of Pharmacy, School of Nursing, things like that, where we're able to do some initiatives and projects across the university that help trickle down to the community. The CED is part of a national greater network called the Association of University Centers on Disabilities. You can see here that we are in every state in various capacities, and we may be located in one part of the state, but services do cover the entire state. This is a federally mandated activity across the country. Our role as a Center for Excellence in Disabilities is to provide education and training, technical assistance, gap filling direct services, dissemination of information, and research activities. We're covering several of these topics as part of our communities of practice because we're bringing information together to provide education and training and technical assistance to our folks that are out there providing direct services. And so we hope that this information gets across the state and we're able to influence some policies and programs over time. The CED, you can see we have offices in all the blue counties, but we do serve the entire state through 7 programs and 4 clinics. We have about 90 staff across the center. You might find us in one of the main offices like Morgantown or Big Chimney, or you may find us scattered in some of our partners' locations or satellite offices. You may find us at a DHHR or within a DRS office, any of our partners like that that we share space with. You can become an affiliate of the CED. It allows you to stay connected with the initiatives and programs that we have going on. If we have a research project where we're looking for a particular demographic, you would be able to stay in tune with those sort of activities and all of our fun programs and things like that, fundraisers, stuff like that. So if you would please indulge me, and I am going to put a poll, if I can find it, up on the screen. As you know, we've tried to track what parts of the state we have been able to include in our groups. And so I'm going to launch a survey. If you could just let us know what part of the state you're joining in from. And if you're from out of state, you can choose other, and you could put in the chat where you're hailing from. And I know I'm using strange categories. Northern Panhandle, we know it's a pretty typical label, but those mountain lakes, if you're not sure what space you're in, we can go back to the map. We've got a lot of mountaineer country. That's Region 6 Workforce Development. A lot of you I've worked with as a partner over the years. We're located up here in Morgantown, so that makes sense. But we've had a great representation of, I think, every region of the state. As we wrap up next month on our 10th session, I'll present a report of where we've had everybody coming in from. So I'm gonna go ahead and end that poll. Looks like I got most of you guys in here, and I can share the results and show you. As usual, we've got a strong representation up here in Mountaineer Country. Let's go. And then we've got some Hatfield and McCoy representation, Metro Valley down south, Mid-Ohio Valley over Parkersburg region. And then we had a few notes in the chat. Our guest speaker is joining us from Tennessee, and we've got Mustafa from the Midwest. Mustafa has been involved with the CED for a good while, and so we're glad to have you here and spreading the good word in the Midwest. Thank you for doing that. I save all those results just like I said. We miss you too, Mustafa. All right, thank you for that. And just a quick reminder, what are we doing here? A community of practice is a group of people who share a concern, set of problems, or a passion about a topic. In this instance, we're talking about employment, specifically transitions for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, but really of all abilities, looking at inclusivity and how we can get employers to buy in to programs and supports and hire our clients and friends and family members and neighbors. Three distinct elements are that we are a community, we share a domain of interest, and we have a variety of experiences that are similar that we bring to the table where we're able to share and reflect on that. Right, so real quick, you know the schedule by now if you've been joining a lot of our sessions. We'll hear from our guest speaker, and then we'll do some reflection questions, and then we'll wrap up and call it a day. We only have 2 sessions left. We're in this one, and we're going to hear from Lisa Jordan and Human Solutions LLC, and I'll let her tell you more about that. I won't give it away. And then next month in November, our final session will be Dr. David Wittenberg from Mathematica Policy Research Group. So we'll wrap it up with some policy and some data. So Lisa, I put you up on the screen.
That's an old one.
Well, that's what you looked like the last time we worked together.
Maybe 10 years ago.
So I didn't mean to put you.
No, it's great. It's a great segue into it.
I put you on the spot here, but I think I have another slide here that I want to share that really has a lot of impact. But just take a moment to read about Lisa. I really love that she's got the disability expertise alongside the workforce development expertise. A lot of times those 2 entities are working not together. Maybe they don't even know each other. And so having those experiences and knowledge from both of those worlds, I think is really helpful to the clients and the community as a whole. And then this next one that I wanted to, and so then the second paragraph here really focused on the workforce development aspect, the focus on youth, and now the focus on mature workers, which I think is just lovely and oftentimes a group that is overlooked or underserved. So I was really happy to see that focus. I really was excited about this next slide. Just take a minute to soak it in, because we've heard some of these endorsements as we've been talking to different partners. We've talked about CAPE. We've talked about, what was the one that really stuck out to me? It was the NAWDP and the SHRM, or do we call it SHRM? SHRM, because I know we've heard that mentioned in some of our other best practices and talking about training staff and having highly qualified individuals moving into positions to support individuals. So I just wanted to brag about Lisa's experiences and the knowledge that she brings to the table. And some of these I think are specific to California, so we wouldn't be as familiar with. Some of these terms we've been saying we should tap into these. So I thought that was a great thing to reflect on. And I promise that's the last slide I have. So thank you all for listening and indulging me there. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Lisa Jordan with Human Solutions and let her tell you more about this great program that she's built and pioneered and is running strong. So thanks for being here, Lisa.
Thank you so much. It really is my privilege to be here. I spent some time last night just getting to know West Virginia and disability statistics, and did not know that your state was really, at least last time they did census data, had the most number of people with disabilities per state in the country. So that was interesting information. And then I spent some time just looking at all the wonderful information that's available through what you're doing here, and spent some time just perusing some of the videos and looking through. And it's really wonderful what Mandy and Courtney have put together for you all here. And again, I'm really happy to be here and share a little bit about what we do, but also talk about another program that's available nationally, including in West Virginia. And that is the Ticket to Work program. And how many of you, if you're comfortable putting in the chat, how many of you are familiar with the Ticket to Work program? You just want to say yes.
You don't have to be intimately familiar with it, but have you heard of it?
Even heard of it? Okay, I see. Okay, perfect. So yes, okay. Okay, perfect. That's perfect. We're going to go over briefly some about it, because it is a service that's out there for individuals with disabilities. It's a no-cost service, and I'll get into a little bit more details. As far as Human Solutions, we've been doing training and consulting with governments and nonprofit organizations since 2004. And we've been providing direct services through the Ticket to Work program to individuals with disabilities virtually nationwide since 2009. So we've been doing virtual services for quite some time. We used to be based in California, and 2 years ago, we moved to the great state of Tennessee. But I have team that is scattered from East Coast, West Coast, and in the middle. So everybody's able to do the job that we do virtually. So I thought I'd start talking about the services that are available to individuals with disabilities, and looking through the guest speakers that have already come through. You have your Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, adult and youth programs. We probably have state vocational rehabilitation programs that may be represented on this call, your community college and state universities, special initiatives and grants like the Disability Employment Initiative and accelerators, if you've heard of those, and those go through the WIOA programs, independent living centers, and I'm sure there are many, many more that are out there. But the program I'm going to spend a moment talking about is the Ticket to Work program. And some of you have said you've heard of it. It was the Ticket to Work and Work Incentives Improvement Act was signed into law by President Clinton back in 1999. So it was initiated back then, and it was really to encourage, it was not just the program I'm going to talk about, but the Improvement Act was to encourage states to enable beneficiaries to purchase necessary Medicaid coverage if they needed it, and we're working to continue the Medicare coverage after they went back to work and were off cash benefits. And then it was also to establish the Ticket to Work program, which was meant to provide employment preparation and placement services to individuals with disabilities. So the goal of the program is to offer beneficiaries ongoing support, so to prepare them for and secure gainful employment. The ultimate goal is to hopefully help individuals get off cash benefits, but that isn't always what happens. For some people, it's really just getting back into work. It may be just trying it out at the time. So there's a lot of safety nets that are built into this program. Again, goal to obtain earnings that are sufficient to stay self-supporting, and that looks different for everybody. We have worked with individuals that have no high school diploma to individuals that have a PhD. So it's completely across the board in terms of who this program is meant for. But the, again, goal is to allow people a better future, and hopefully that involves work. If I talked about my philosophy, I would tell you I'm a big believer that everybody can do something. There's something out there for everybody to do. And that's one thing that we like to celebrate as part of our program in Ticket. So in terms of eligibility, it's geared towards individuals that are ages 18 to 64. The eligibility goes a little beyond 64 because retirement age isn't always 65 for people, depending on when you were born. So it may extend a little bit past that. But your transition age youth would fall into this as well. An individual needs to be receiving monthly cash benefits from Social Security. So that could be supplemental security income or Social Security disability insurance. So either benefit. And then they just have to be interested in work and attempting to become self-sufficient. When I get to the duration of this program, this isn't something that's meant to happen overnight. The organizations that are involved in this, such as ours, are really in this for the long haul in terms of working with individuals. It is a voluntary program, so there's no requirement that Social Security beneficiaries have to participate in it. But all the services that are provided to them are no cost from the service providers. One thing that's interesting about the Ticket to Work program from a provider perspective is that it's a performance-based program. So we actually don't get paid for any services from Social Security that we provide to beneficiaries until we actually get them back to work. So we have about a 65% to 70% placement rate, and we're working with right now about 215 individuals across the nation. And we are one of probably 700 providers across the country. And looking last night, right now, there are 2 providers within the state of West Virginia. And Mandy was telling me there may be a 3rd one that's been approved. But there are also a number of virtual providers like our organization that provide services to individuals in all of the states. Or regionally or in different areas. So again, there are no barriers in terms of transportation and people being able to get to organizations if there's not one close by. There usually is a virtual provider that would be able to assist someone. So services are provided by organizations called employment networks, and that's actually what we are in the Ticket to Work program. Human Solutions is an employment network. But one thing I need to mention, in addition to no-cost services, if someone is engaged in the ticket program and they're making progress, and I will actually send over, Mandy, afterwards, the timely progress requirements, because I didn't want to go too far down the rabbit hole with that. But there are protections in place that someone will be protected from a continuing disability review if they're making timely progress in the program while they're in it. So that protects them from those medical reviews while they're attempting to go back to work, which is a real benefit for individuals. So employment networks, they come in all shapes and sizes, private organizations, public organizations, organizations receiving federal and state dollars. We are what's called a traditional employment network, and I'll go over some of the services that we provide in a moment. But also, one of the organizations in your state that's an employment network is one of your workforce organizations. So they would be considered a workforce employment network. Not all American job centers or organizations funded by Workforce Investment Opportunity Act money are employment networks, but one of the ones in your state happens to be one. State vocational rehabilitation agencies that serve as employment networks fall in that category. Not every state functions in that way, and I'm not sure how West Virginia does it, but when someone is involved in the ticket program, if they're working with vocational rehabilitation, their ticket is considered active. So they would not be able to work with an organization like myself or another one because they're engaged with vocational rehabilitation. And I'll talk in a little bit about how that can work together. There are administrative employment networks, and those might be central agencies such as Mandy's, where she works, where there are a number of organizations under her that are providing services to individuals with disabilities, and they are there for the administrative piece. And then, as I mentioned before, there are local providers, virtual providers, regional providers. There's a variety of different ways it services. And there are also organizations that actually hire individuals that they're called employer ENs out there as well. So the required services that we are asked to provide and required to provide to everybody that we're working with is career counseling, job placement assistance, retention services, and then the additional services may vary. And I'm actually it's really based on the EN. And part of the reason this program was created back then is to give individuals with disabilities choice about who they wanted to access. There's nothing wrong with going to state vocational rehabilitation because they provide services that we don't, but not everybody may need that level of service, or they may, but it was to give people choice of where they wanted to go and receive services. And we have worked with individuals that have actually received services from us, from vocational rehabilitation. So it's really meant for people to be able to find an organization that's a good fit for specifically what they need going forward. This is just an example of some of the services. And again, every organization varies in terms of what they provide. Some organizations, job coaching may be part of that. Job leads, assistance with job accommodations, which is something that we do. I'll talk in a moment about what the individualized work plan is. One thing that I am seeing more often than not, and I know there's been information received about the Work Incentive Planning and Assistance Project, and I know that that falls under the purview where you're at, Mandy, and I will give that as a resource later. But a lot of the employment networks now have individuals on staff that provide work incentive counseling, and that's something that we do in our program. And when I talk about placement services and getting people back to work, that's probably the number one question that we receive is around what's going to be the impact on my benefits if I go back to work. And not just the cash benefit, but as you know, if you're working with individuals, there's a lot of rumor control that's out there about what happens to their medical benefits out there. And the one thing that Ticket to Work does, and also some of the work incentives out there, is if someone goes off of cash benefits due to work, there are safety nets in place to help maintain those medical benefits for that individual. Labor market information, training and referrals. We offer our own internal training and training on a variety of topics, but someone may be better suited to go to the American Job Center to receive more intensive training or to connect with vocational rehabilitation. So I really see, while we're all working with individuals with disabilities, I feel like there's so many people to serve that it's not a problem to refer over to the best organization if we aren't the best fit for someone. And I know a lot of other organizations feel the same way. We're really in this to help individuals. So referrals are definitely made if individuals need them. Some of the benefits, I mentioned protection from continuing disability reviews and the availability of work incentives and work incentive counseling. And the work incentives, some of you may be familiar with some of the work incentives that are available, but it's really meant to help ease people off of cash benefits versus and just have them go away all at once, which can happen in some instances, but there's a lot available to individuals to help them manage that as they're moving forward. Our organization also assists with wage reporting. When someone goes back to work, again, number one thing is we want to start reporting wages to Social Security, and that is a service that we provide. And then if someone goes off of cash benefits, something happens with their disability, there are services available for expedited reinstatement of benefits. So there's a lot of, as I mentioned, safety nets in place. Now, the individual or individualized work plan, or IWP, that is actually the contract that we as an organization develop with a beneficiary, and its agreement of how we're going to work together. It lays out the actions that we will take to help that beneficiary, that client, that consumer get back to work and successfully do so. It includes both long and short-term goals, and it is a living document. So if we're working with an individual and they say, you know, that's not really what I want to do, we're able to amend and change that document, because it's about consumer choice when we're working with them. In terms of the level of support that is provided for our program, it really varies based on the individual and what their needs are. We have clients that have come to us that really need the basics, and that could be working with them on their resume, interview prep, and a lot of times it's just encouragement because they may not have that support system in place, to a higher level of service where we do full scope assessments, more intensive follow-alongs. We also work with individuals that have a representative payee, so someone that is helping them manage their Social Security benefits, where we work in tandem with them. A lot of times it's a parent where we're working together. We meet regularly. We problem solve any issues that might come up as that individual is transitioning into work, provide that work incentive counseling along the way. And I think one of the great things about the ticket program is we're providing services for a lot of our clients for 5 years plus. So this isn't just we get you a job and we're done. We go on, and if I look at the ticket process of, you know, we develop our work plan, we assign the ticket, the person gets a job, I would say the vast majority of our services happen from step 3 to step 5. When I mentioned we're in them with them for the long haul, we really, really are. And a lot of our clients sometimes go back and repeat step 3 if it's not a good fit for them. But I think when individuals with disabilities are going back to work, having that long-term support has been really critical in the success of some individuals. So I mentioned Department of Rehabilitation, and once someone goes back to work and eventually, you know, 60, 90 days, the case is closed, an individual that's working with Department of Rehabilitation or vocational rehabilitation would be eligible in most cases for ticket. So they could then assign their ticket after the vocational rehabilitation services close to work with an EN for retention services only. And so that EN could then follow them along and assist. And that actually ends up being a great benefit, not just to the individual, but it does for the vocational rehabilitation agency, because those retention services are provided and it's helping achieve great outcomes for them as well. I think for many that haven't worked before, it's a matter of having that additional support system to really build up their endurance, to help them manage dynamics in the workplace. And in a lot of cases, we assist with career advancement if that's something that somebody wants to do. Now, step 5, the celebrating success, that's actually something we probably do starting at step 2 and forward, from sending out, mail out birthday cards to, acknowledging people when they get a job, to providing different incentives along the way to individuals. Our philosophy is no win or no celebration is too small. We actually have an email set up in our program where if you were to email wins@humansolutionstraining.com, and if you want to do that to be congratulated for something that you're doing, feel free. Somebody from my team will respond back to that. But we want to, especially since we're virtual, engagement is so important. So we want to have a variety of different ways that we are engaging our clients. And that is one way that we're able to do it. And in all honesty, sometimes just getting out of bed is a win for some of our clients, especially when they're just getting started. And so to be able to celebrate that with them, that's one thing that we really love to do in our program. Now, I want to talk just for a moment about today's job market. And some of you have probably experienced this as well in the work that you do, even just, and Mandy was talking about this before we got started today, just in the fact that many of you probably have had to work virtual. I don't know how many of you are back in your offices now, but not only have we had to do work differently, but our clients have as well in terms of navigating today's job market. It's different. I know when COVID first started, one of the things that we did is reach out to every single one of our clients to, one, make sure that they were okay, and 2, to provide them with any resources or other things that they needed. And again, that was part of engagement. But we had probably, of our clients working, we probably had about 10 that were furloughed. We had several that were laid off. And so just being there and be able to kind of pick up the pieces and help them navigate and connect with any financial resources they may have needed if they weren't able to cover rent or mortgage or whatever was out there. That was one thing we tried to be really proactive on. Now, the other thing that changed is while some fields have really picked back up, they may look different. We have clients that were really fearful because of their own health issues to go back into a regular workplace. They preferred now to work virtually instead of going in. So we've really had to ramp up that part of finding out where are those positions where people can work virtually, but those positions that are actually real positions that are out there and not just kind of gimmicky things for people to do. And then going one step further, how do we prepare our clients to be technically ready to be able to work virtual? As some of you probably know, working virtual is an adjustment when you're working from home. So preparing clients for that. The other thing is virtual interviews. That was something new for a lot of our clients. And so we've done some workshops on, making eye contact with the camera. How do you set up? If your background's really busy, muting that out because that's what interviewers will focus on. So really just preparing individuals for that aspect of it. Others were not able to return to the types of positions, or if they were seeking a position in a certain area and that field changed, then we spent some time looking at transferable skills and how did that apply and move over to other industries. So we had to really kind of think outside the box for that. We recently sent out a communication probably a week ago to our clients just about COVID and just how the workplace is changing in some areas. And it wasn't any type of, we try to stay out of the politics of anything that's going on and really to let our clients know that whatever their choice is and whatever choice they've made related, and I hate to bring up the vaccination word, but we have to. This is all part of the work that we're doing now in terms of workforce development. Is that's their personal decision with their family and doctor, and we're there to support them and help them navigate whatever decision and choice that they're making, so they can move forward in obtaining employment and working towards those employment goals. So we've deemed ourselves kind of that safety zone or free zone where they are able to communicate about any concerns they have, and then really work to problem solve with them to find the appropriate workplace for them. I think greatest barriers, I think a lot of times revolve around encouragement. I think it really evolves a lot around encouragement and setting up that support system for them. So if we find that we're the only one that is being that encourager, where else can we connect them and find a place for them to feel comfortable and connect with other people? We are still seeing client success. Despite what's been happening the past 2 years, I don't think our placements have slowed down at all. We're still seeing placements every single month with our clients. So despite what's going on in today's world, people are still working. They are still finding positions. We're having clients now find a lot more virtual positions, but there is still a great deal of success that we are seeing happening out there. I think one of the, and before I get into some resources, one of the other things I think that's really helped with success is that connection with other partners. So it's great that we might be working with someone, but if I'm working with someone, and I see Marjorie here, so I'm going to say if I'm working with someone that Marjorie is working with, it's really great when we can work together with that individual and provide that long-term support. That's when we've seen a lot of really positive outcomes, is when we're working together, whether that's with another partner, a parent, family members, whoever that individual wants to involve as part of their support system. Sharing resources, we're really great about, like I said, referring out to connect individuals, some examples. And I'm actually going to give you a link to direct employers on the next slide. But we recently connected with an organization called Direct Employers Association. They partner with a number of community-based organizations, and they are actually assisting employers in meeting the OFCCP requirement in terms of hiring individuals with disabilities and helping them meet their diversity requirements. So we have it doesn't cost anything as a service provider to join with them, but what they do is connect you with employers that are hiring. And those employers know that we work with individuals with disabilities, so there's no disclosure on our part necessarily about that. And it's been a really great resource for us. And so we're just kind of getting going with that. We also have what's called a Partnership Plus agreement with our state vocational rehabilitation agency. We have it both in the state of California and in Tennessee, where we have staff working, and that allows us a referral process across partners. The American Job Centers, we partner with a number of American Job Centers that are not employment networks to help assist their individuals with disabilities. And we would really do that with any partner that was interested, that maybe they didn't want to go the route of becoming an employment network, but they serve the clientele and they could use the added support of our organization and the services that we provide to help that individual get back to work and be successful. And then the only other program I'll mention is the Work Incentive Planning and Assistance programs, which again, you may have heard about already. And I'm going to provide resources for all of those. So the choosework.ssa.gov website, if you're interested in learning more about Ticket to Work, and this is their website right here. Hopefully you can still see that. If you are if you're interested in finding help, the tab is 4 over, and you can do a direct search and then just plug in the zip code that you're in, and it will give a list of providers. I always encourage, and even on our website, and our website actually is, and I don't have it up here, but for our ticket program, it's youremploymentnetwork.com. And on there, we really encourage beneficiaries to check out a number of different employment networks, aside from us, to really determine who's the best fit for them. So back to the presentation, those are there. And the last one I want to mention here is the GCF Learn Free. If you're not familiar with it, this is a resource. It's actually run by one of the Goodwills on the East Coast. And they continue to add to the training that they have available, but it's no cost training, everything from computer basics, like how to use the mouse and navigate and use the internet. I've seen things recently on there from design and photography to basic grammar to learning how to use Microsoft programs. And people will actually get a certificate of completion for going through those programs. So those are all available for free. That's a resource that we use all the time that I wanted to share with you if you're not familiar with it. But at this point, I just wanted to open it up to see if you had any questions. I went through that pretty quickly, but I wanted to be cognizant of time.
That was great, Lisa. And I'm wondering if you're the one that taught me about GCF Learn Free. I'm guessing you probably are. But
that was one that we used back in, yes.
I mean, they've got a YouTube video and a tutorial for any topic that you can think of. Honestly, even for your own personal enrichment.
I'm going to flip back there.
Learn Free. I put it in the chat. I put Lisa, I put Human Solutions, your ticket, whatever I typed, youremploymentnetwork.com and GCF Global. Really awesome resource. And they're not DOL recognized certificates, but you put all those together, you're going to be a soft skill superstar.
Well, if anything, it's going to give individuals the confidence and the basic skill level to go out there and be able to, especially working virtually now. I think some of those technical skills are really important.
Absolutely. And I took some notes because we reflect on what we want to take away from our guests' expertise. And so I took some nice notes there. I like really to hear that you guys do that personal touch, because if you're in case management, sometimes it becomes very quick and in the door, out the door. And so when I hear Lisa saying that they're touching base, checking on their clients during the pandemic starting and touching base on birthdays and this celebrating all successes, it really builds a relationship, which is going to build more trust, which is going to get more stuff done. So I think that's really a testament to case management, to be able to have that personal touch.
Yeah, I think that's key, really, because people need to feel like we're invested as well to really have that relationship. I wanted to actually give a plug for you all because I know you house the WIPA project, correct?
Yes.
That I noticed in the videos, if you're wanting to, you may have mentioned this, but I'm going to give a plug anyway. I noticed there were the Working Wednesday videos that were out there. If anybody is wanting to learn a little bit more about work incentives, it was broken down beautifully by the different types, and it's actually out where you house your videos from these calls as well. So I just wanted to put the plug in there. I'm all about sharing great resources, and you had plenty that were out there. So
cool. Thanks for paying attention. Yeah, if you guys aren't familiar with Working Wednesdays, Work Incentive Wednesdays, Jen Tenney, who's sometimes on these calls with us, she's our WIPA supervisor, and Cynthia I saw was on the call here. She's one of our work incentives counselors, and so yeah, we've got that in-house. We cover the whole state. We actually just absorbed some of southwest Pennsylvania, so now we're the Appalachian work incentives rather than just the West Virginia. And so, yeah, thanks for that plug. And a lot of people, like you mentioned, do think that if I go to work, I will lose my benefits. And there's a lot more gray area to it than that. So if
definitely
you're familiar with that, check out our Working Wednesdays. Thanks for saying that, Lisa.
Excellent. Well, I will stop my share at this point, unless there's any questions.
Maggie?
Hi, Lisa. Thank you so much. That was great. There's some clients that I work with that have been through the vocab rehab services that because we're a CRP, so we have provided services to a specific client. And then, of course, if we've run the gamut, maybe they was given a job and they were placed in a job and they worked for maybe a year or two, and then they lose the job for whatever reason. Of course, we don't get the opportunity to work with them again. Not as much, not as hands-on as we were able to before. One, we don't have, we're not funded to do so, and because that it's kind of a one and done thing. For a client such as that, could I say, hey, have you looked into Ticket to Work?
Yes.
something that,
Absolutely. And I mean, again, the individual can investigate whether they use someone local that's in your area, or they use a provider like us that is national. You could absolutely partner with an employment network. And I think, again, that would be a great way, because they would have the support of you as well to be able to assist them in getting back to work. We have clients that have actually graduated from the program, 5, 6 years down the road, that went back on disability because, disability, that can happen sometimes. And they're back with us, back working again on their second ticket. So there's no limit for us with that. They can just only work and have their ticket active with one provider at a time. But that would be a great partnership for you to continue the service the way that you're doing it and connect with another organization like an employment network.
Okay, great.
And Lisa, I think that was a testament that, someone loses their job and they want to come back to work with you guys. It's not like they're like, oh, that Human Solutions, it's their fault that I lost my job, because that can sometimes be a tricky relationship, that there's some blame placed on the supports. But if a consumer is having a tough time and they return back to their service provider and say, hey, I need some additional help, I think that's a real testimonial to the services that you're providing to your client.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I also wanted to mention, you alluded to the partnership between rehab services and employment networks. And I'll be right with you, Mustafa. And that's something I think is real important. There's something called Partnership Plus. And this is where Division of Rehab Services, and we've got plenty of DRS representatives that are with us today and have participated in these sessions. We've got, I think good relationships across these agencies. So what that would look like is someone serves a client through DRS. They successfully close after there's 90 days of employment, in which case usually you're on your own unless something goes wrong and you come back to reopen your case. But in this instance, you have an agreement with employment networks in the state where it's a soft handoff to those employment networks from rehab services. Instead of closing their case, they transfer the case to the employment network of choice for that consumer. And so that's where you're able to have those retention services and those follow-up as time goes on. I don't think we have any Partnership Plus happening in the state. But billing.
Even if you don't, if you're aware of a case closing and you feel like someone might benefit from retention services, they can always reach the consumer, or the organization can always reach out on their own and help connect that individual. So even if that's not in place, that's okay.
It's good to know.
But and we've also, even when we don't have a relationship in another state, if we have a client that's with us that says, I think folk rehab, they have some things that I need and we don't have them, we'll make the referral the other way, and then hope and leave the door open for the client when they receive services to come back, because then we can help achieve that successful outcome for VR as well by providing retention services.
Yeah, and we've talked about that concept because if you guys remember, Steve Wiseman, who's our funding agency, the West Virginia Developmental Disabilities Council, he mentioned, I think it was 2 months ago, that there is a competitive nature. We're funding, we've got funding, we're looking for outcomes, but I love it when agencies are able to partner and work towards that common goal and everybody meets their outcomes, because what's better than that? So thank you. Mustafa, did you have a question or comment?
Yes, well, thank you very much for this excellent session. I'm very enjoying it. So yeah, I am a refugee from Iraq and I am a person with disabilities. I remember my first interaction with Ticket to Work. I remember I got a call from you and there was a lady, she's like, oh, I'm calling from Ticket to Work. And I had very limited English at that time. I was like, she started explaining this and that. I'm like, is this a scam? Like, who are you? Like, nobody talks about this program. So I just hang up the phone. And later on, I'm in social work. So later on, I realized, oh my God, this is so important. Yeah, it's real. That lady wasn't deceiving me. So I'm very interested in hearing your opinion. I know I am also involved currently. Mandy knows that I'm very interested in looking at the partnership of of disability agencies partnering with refugee agencies, immigrant agencies, to bring this awareness to refugee and immigrant communities, because I feel like from my experience, from what I have been seeing so far, there's a big lack of awareness about important employment programs. So have you experienced something like that, or I'm very interested in hearing your thoughts on it.
I have not experienced that yet. In terms of it, the awareness not being made in communities, is that what you're referencing?
Yes, yes. I remember I did a webinar when I was in Morgantown, West Virginia. I gathered immigration and immigrant and refugee agencies and disability agencies. We had to like talk about like how we can and partner, and like in that webinar you can see like like the agencies didn't know what other agency was doing, and they were like, oh my God, you have really important programs, we can refer our clients to you. But you can see a place like Morgantown, it's a very small city. There's like refugee agencies, there's many disability agencies, but there was like each agency did not know anything about other agencies. So you can I don't know if that was clear, that answer.
Mustafa, I see that all the time. I'm actually, now that you've reframed that for me, I'm teaching a group, they're in Ventura, California. So that's north of Los Angeles, just for context. And they're all disability service providers like yourselves. And not everybody is aware of what everybody is doing, and they're a smaller community there. So one of the things that we're doing as part of our 3 series training is they've done some one just to get to know what are the demographics and who is in our area. Do we have all the services we need? And right now we're working on a resource guide that connects key partners, key disability partners, but also like today before this call, I was on the phone with a farmer and migrant organization because they have a huge farming community there, to learn more about their services so I can share with the group. So I think the more you come together in situations like the one we're in today, where we can connect and share information and connect the dots, I think it needs to continue to happen. So I was telling Mandy and Courtney, I just think this is great what you all are doing here, because it's bringing issues like yours up. But in terms of the disconnect, I see that a lot.
And the more we do this, the less disconnect we'll have. So participate in groups, join them, be part of the conversation. You will all start to recognize each other. So thank you for that, Mustafa. Joel, did you have a question or did we answer it? Maybe not. You're muted if you do have a question. And Lisa provided her email address there. Thank you. I also provided their website. I'd like to get my hands on a resource guide that you guys come up with. Any resource guide that you and your team come up with, I want to look at. But it might be more specific to the regions that you serve. I don't know. But yeah, there's a wealth of blogs and things like that on the Human Solutions website, and tools and tricks of the trade for employment and all that good stuff. Court, did you have a question?
I do. It kind of, Mustafa's kind of spurred my thought process here. And, one thing, Lisa, maybe I'll kind of pick your brain around, maybe Mustafa, this might kind of get it started on how you can maybe move forward is, have you ever considered using cultural brokers to kind of work through getting through those barriers, such as working with refugees or any other individuals from different cultures? Because I know there's probably cultural aspects that go along with this as well.
Absolutely. I work with another organization who happens to be from the same area that does just that. And I was thinking, when Mustafa was talking about that, there is nothing prohibiting the groups and organizations that he's working with from becoming what we're doing, and providing that need to the community, and connecting that. So Mustafa, if you want to talk after, my email's in there for you if you want to email me, but that would be a really just something to consider, because it's just like if I were to serve a group that was just, there wasn't that type of connection. Mustafa has the connection. So I think so.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much. I appreciate that.
Oh, can I add on that? I think, Courtney, you highlighted a very important point. I think that's what when we partner, we can help each other recognize these small barriers. So I'm focusing on refugee women with disabilities and their access to economic well-being. So I'm seeing the cultural barriers and how that restricts many refugees from accessing employment. And unless the disability agencies, the refugee agencies are aware of these barriers, and then they can fully help them. So yeah, Courtney, that's a very important point.
And Mustafa, I could see those barriers being in place beyond just, refugees or anyone beyond that, just looking at the Appalachian region. Lisa, I know you were saying earlier, you just moved to Tennessee. So you're kind of in this region. But West Virginia is very unique, being submerged as the only state within exclusively in the region. And there are cultural things around that too, that, as individuals working in West Virginia or living in West Virginia, we should consider and account for as well.
Well, and it's about building trust. And so involving individuals from the communities and or from a particular demographic is hugely important. Because it's just like if I were to say, and we've done this with our team, we think about, these services we can provide in our own program, but it's like, wait a minute, we need to check with the people that we're actually serving to make sure this is even something that they want. So involving those individuals, I think is incredibly important to make that connection and to build that trust.
Are there any other questions?
Those were good questions. And I think Lisa's going to stick around for a little bit. I'm going to be on the move here in a couple minutes because I've got 6 students that just took a bus, and I got to meet them at the bus depot to make sure they get on the right next bus. So I'm going to get on the move here, and Courtney is going to facilitate some of our group questions. But before I head out, I just wanted to highlight our Ticket to Work agencies in the state of West Virginia, and I wondered if anyone knows who they are. Dun, dun, dun. No, I'll tell you. So we have, Lisa mentioned the Workforce Development type of EN, and that's going to be the Region 2 Workforce Development Board down in Huntington. They act as an employment network. And then, of course, we have our Division of Rehab Services offices across the state that act as Ticket to Work agencies. It's typically administrative. So usually the local counselors and those providing direct services aren't usually having those conversations. The other Ticket to Work agency in the area is Job Squad, which we've had, I don't see her here. Lisa O'Neill has been on several of our sessions from Job Squad, and they serve up here in Bridgeport, Fairmont, Morgantown area, and the Kanawha Putnam counties down south. And the new employment network that I guess isn't even on the list yet, but I know they've been
on there. I just checked.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Is it SW Resources?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So SW Resources out of the Parkersburg area. They're also a CRP. You might be familiar with them if you attend West Virginia ADE meetings with Bob Perner. And so they were a sheltered workshop back in the day, and they've really changed a lot of their services, and they've jumped on the Ticket to Work train. There's only, that's not many in the state. So if your agency's interested, it's a pile of paperwork, but it's worth it. And it's a really neat service that you can combine with some of your other services if you're, if you're serving as a CRP or some other type of community action, those type of agencies. It's a lot of flexibility in serving your clientele. So that's just what I wanted to highlight. Check out your local Ticket to Work agencies. I refer a ton of people to Lisa and Human Solutions because they do serve, the whole country in that remote way that's really convenient for a lot of people that maybe are working days and maybe just want to check in by email, or they're in school, that sort of thing. So don't forget about your Ticket to Work agencies. They do a ton of stuff. I'm gonna move now, and Courtney is gonna work on your discussion questions. I'm gonna tap back in on my phone and boogie on over to the bus depot. We probably won't have time to wrap up today, so we're just gonna cover our questions, and then I'm gonna include it in the summary for next month. So I'll come back on and just be on the move. Courtney, you have what you need?
Yeah, I think so. So I think we'll just probably stay as a whole group today.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
fine.
thank you.
Yeah, and if you guys have to run, I know we have a lot of stuff on our schedule, but we have, I think, about 6 questions. Again, we're talking about employees, preparing employees. So we're really going to focus on what needs we see out there, what industries we see a lot of people wanting to go towards, get into the nitty-gritty stuff. So I'm going to make Courtney host, and I'm going to hop back on my phone, and I won't have my camera on because I'm going to be in motion. You guys don't want to see that. So thank you so much, Lisa. And if you can stick around and contribute and just leave when you gotta go. Thanks, guys.
Wonderful. All right.